Hello.
Good afternoon, Professor Longo. I am Hebe from TimePie. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm fine. This is 4 p.m. at your time, right?
Yes, it is.
How was your day?
Good.
Actually, we have been following your research since TimePie was founded, and it is my great honor to meet you face to face today.
Oh, thank you.
As we have introduced in the email, the Longevity Forum we hold annually is aiming at bringing up the top scholars around the world in these fields like you to discuss the latest researches, interventions, and technologies and transform it to our Chinese audiences. So it could be said that it is our most significant event annually. It is really appreciate that you would like to record the lecture for us in advance. That supports us a lot.
Sure. Happy to do it. Yeah.
There is another thing that I want to make sure with you that we have collected some questions about longevity diets from our followers in advance. It would be great if it is convenient for you to answer them.
Sure.
Well, if it is not, we may discuss it in the follow-up
No, it's
email.
fine. I can answer them.
Thank you so much. Now, may I start it now? Shall we start?
Yeah, you can start. Yeah, let me first load up, share my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Okay, so thank you. And I'm Dr. Longo from USC, University of Southern California, School of Gerontology, Longevity Institute. And so my laboratory is focused on nutrition and longevity, but also the genetics of aging. And so why are we studying aging? Well, we're studying aging because obviously it's a very interesting, scientifically interesting topic. But also, I was struck by this slide by my colleague, Matt Chamberlain, on the risk factors for cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer. And you see smoking and obesity keep coming up as the number, among the most important risk factors. But then they almost disappear when compared to 30 years of aging, right? So now, even smoking and obesity, which we've heard about for so long, being so central to our being unhealthy and our diseases. But now compared to aging, they're not insignificant, but very low effect, right? So then, of course, we want to, fight smoking and reduce obesity, but also the most important thing is going after the aging process. So, I mean, the health span is something that you heard about. And so it's not about how long you live, but it's also how long you live healthy. But then I cloned a new word, which I felt was missing, which is Juventology, right? So the study of, not just the study of aging, what happens during the aging process, which is called gerontology, but the study of how do you maintain somebody young, right? So, and that's what I call Juventology, the study of youth. And that's as important, I think, as health span. So is there a program that keep people young for a longer or much longer time? Or can we modify that program, to make it go from, let's say, 40-year program to 60-year program, maybe 70 years program? Can we keep people young for 60 years instead of maybe 40 or 30 or 40? Okay, and so if you look at the aging field, you see stories like this one, and this is Madame Calment. She has the record longevity, so she made it to 122 years of age, and she smoked until 117. So she did not have a healthy lifestyle. But probably, as you see from her, and also from other people that I followed, for example, Emma Morano, who made it to 117. And I studied her for the last 5 years of her life. And she did not have a good lifestyle. But then she had brothers and sisters, all of whom made it to age 90, 95. One sister made it to 102. And so that's probably the genetics. So these are very rare individuals that can do whatever they want. And they still, if they're lucky, it comes with some fortune. But if they're lucky, they can make it to a very old age, independently of the lifestyle. But for everybody else, I think we know now very clearly that the nutrition and dietary restriction can make a big difference. So this is probably the most ambitious study ever done in the world for longevity, which is let's follow monkeys for their entire lives. So it's a 25-year-long study. And these are monkeys that have been studied at the University of Wisconsin by Richard Weindruck and Rosalind Anderson and Dr. Calment. And so what happens if you take a fairly westernized diet, but you just give 25% less? So in one group, you give a normal level of a Western diet, and then another group, you give the same exact diet, but 25% less calories, right? So you cut it by a quarter. And the results are striking. So diabetes or insulin resistance went from 60% on the normal diet to 5% on the 25% calorie-restricted diet. Tumors were reduced by 50% by calorie restriction, and cardiovascular diseases were reduced by 20 to 30%. But there's also and this is when Walford, actually, this was my mentor back many years ago, 30 years ago, when I started my graduate school. And Walford did his own study of calorie restriction in this Biosphere 2 area in the Arizona desert. So the idea, actually 8 people went inside of this Biosphere 2, and there Walford was a professor at UCLA, started the first human calorie restriction study that lasted almost 2 years. And in this study, they show a reduction in the risk factor for cancer, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension. So this actually happened before the monkey study, but so I'm presenting it after, but it happened before. So now similar results, right, from the monkey study and the human study. And now since then, the human studies, many studies have followed this, and they confirm that calorie restriction is very powerful in reducing disease risk factors. This is just some example. This is when they enter Biosphere 2, they have a fairly low blood pressure, and this low blood pressure becomes even lower in the people that are calorie restricted, and then they exit Biosphere 2 and it goes back. Glucose levels, they start from 90, they drop to about 70. Cholesterol level, they start at 185 total cholesterol, and it drops to 125. So it's really revolutionizing the risk factors in these people. But if you look at Walford on the left, is Walford when he was in calorie restricted, and so he doesn't look healthy at all, right? So he looks like he's being pushed over the limit. So he's getting very low cholesterol, very low blood pressure, very low glycemia, but he's doing it at a cost, right? So it's too much, right? It's now moving into a dangerous range to get it. And here is Walford normally after he exited Biosphere 2, and he was very healthy, had a very healthy nutrition. So he went from very healthy to maybe too much, right? On the left during this Biosphere 2 stage. So is it possible then to get the benefits of this intervention, calorie restriction, without changing your diet? And so for years and years and years after the Walford laboratory time, I started thinking, what if you just fast a person for 5 days, and then you allow him for maybe 1, 2, 3 months to go back to the normal diet, whatever it is that diet is? Could that 5 days carry their effect for months? And originally this was done for cancer. We developed what's called a fasting-mimicking diet. So we were looking at a nutrition that will last 5 days that will be equivalent to water-only fasting, right? So this is low calorie, low sugar, low protein, high fat, plant-based, 100% plant-based diet. And we were looking at effects on IGF-1, IGF-BP1, glucose, and ketone bodies. These are markers in the blood that tell us the person has entered, or the mouse has entered, a full fasting response state, right? Just like if they were not eating at all. So they get to eat, but they have the effects that they will get by not eating. And so what if you take a mouse that is genetically, now we're going to the worst of the worst. This is mice that are genetically engineered to develop diabetes, right? And they become very big, obese, morbidly obese, and then they become insulin resistant, and then they start dying from this insulin resistance, right? So what if you take these mice, and then you start the cycles of this fasting mimicking diet that I just showed you. And these are 5 days, in this case, every couple of weeks, right? So what happens? Well, what happens is if you start the cycle, you see that the glucose level comes down and the survival stays 100%, right? Even though these are mice that are condemned to be obese genetically and condemned to get diabetes genetically, almost 100% of them get it. But the most interesting thing was not about the type 2 diabetes, but was about the pancreas and the regeneration of pancreatic cells, right? So here you see the red is insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. You see after we give them this toxin called streptozotocin, the insulin-producing beta cells go down after 5 days, and after 50 days, it's still all green, right? So there is no insulin being produced in the pancreas of these mice. But if we start the fasting mimicking diet, we see that now the pancreas is able to make new beta cells. So it's beginning to generate new functional insulin-producing beta cells. And this appears to, these C3 lanes, this is when mice eat a normal diet. And this is where the fasting mimicking diet, and this is 1 day after refeeding from the fasting mimicking diet. And these are embryonic pancreas, the embryonic developmental genes, right? So they're the ones turned on when the pancreas is generating, when the mouse is first born. And you see that all green, it means they're all shut down, right? So they're normally shut down, but in the fasting mimicking diet, they turn on, right? And during the refeeding, they're still turned on. So there's a lot of these genes, right? So it looks like the pancreas is beginning to act like in a mouse, it would in a mouse that is first born. And so is undergoing a developmental phase that is leading to functional beta cells. So then Amrenda, and this was Chao Wei and Valentina and Roberta Buono in the lab. Now, Amrenda Mishra instead took on a different task a few years ago, which was, what if I take mice and I give them a very bad diet, a very bad Western, high-fat, high-calorie diet? And so, of course, these mice become obese and they live short, right? So what if once a month for just 5 days, I switch them to a fasting mimicking diet that I just showed you, the same one that we gave to these diabetes mice? And so the results are pretty striking. You see that on the high-fat diet, the mice become very large, and these are the control mice, and these are the high-fat diet plus 5 days amount of the fasting mimicking diet. And if you look at fat, you see that this is the high-fat diet, lots of fat accumulated, lots of body weight accumulated, and the fasting mimicking diet reversed this. But then if you look at lean body mass, no change, right? So we're reversing, with the fasting mimicking diet cycles, we're reversing the accumulation of fat, but not affecting the muscle mass. And also, if you look at cholesterol, high-fat diet, the cholesterol goes high and very high when the mice become old, and the fasting mimicking diet cycles, just 5 days a month, are able to reverse this effect. And also, when you look at the entire lifespan, now you see these are the mice on the normal diet, these are the mice on the Western diet, and these are the mice on the Western diet plus 5 days amount of the fasting mimicking diet. So the fasting mimicking diet is able to almost completely reverse the negative effects of a Western diet. Okay, so what about people? So we did this first trial a number of years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And so it's a human version of a fasting mimicking diet done once a month for 5 days. And these actually, some of the studies have been repeated by groups in China, both the mice and the human, some of the human studies. And so here you see, similar to the mice, the people that undergone 3 monthly cycles of 5 days of the fasting mimicking diet, we see a reduction in body weight, lots of reduction in abdominal fat, waist circumference, but no difference in lean body mass, just like I showed for the mice. So the muscle mass is maintained. So fasting glucose, in people that were started with a normal, they were healthy, nothing happened. In people that were pre-diabetic, the fasting glucose drops, and returns in most cases to a normal level. Inflammation, systemic inflammation, CRP, Nothing happens in those that have normal levels of CRP, but those that have CRP above 1, a baseline, now you see a drop. Cholesterol, a small drop in those that have normal cholesterol, but a much larger drop in those that have cholesterol that is above 200. And blood pressure, again, nothing happens in those that have normal blood pressure, less than 120, but a bigger drop in those that have high blood pressure. So differently from calorie restriction, this is not causing, for example, blood pressure. Remember, calorie restriction, it goes from low 110 to lower 90, right? In this case, we don't see that. And that's probably good, right? So it's avoiding going to this very extreme situation that may have bad effects, good effects and bad effects. So here we're starting, I think, to keep only the good effects and getting rid of the bad effects. And you see here, this is another trial with 84 patients. If we give people a healthy diet, they lose, after 4 months, they lose about 3 pounds of weight. And after 7 months, they lose about 5 pounds of, not weight, of muscle mass, lean body mass, muscle and bone mass. But the fasting-mimicking diet cycles, after 4 cycles, nothing happens. And even after 3 months follow-up, no significant reduction in muscle and bone mass, right? So this suggesting that it's going after is making the individual much healthier without sacrificing the muscle mass. And so what about people that have prediabetes or diabetes? Of the normal people, if you look at the hemoglobin A1C, which is now used to diagnose diabetes, nothing happened those that don't have diabetes. But those that have prediabetes, they see a bigger drop. And those that have diabetes now see the biggest drop, right? So now is now showing signs of regression of diabetes. And a paper that just came out by University of Heidelberg actually confirmed this. They took diabetes patients that were overweight or obese, and then they gave them 6 cycles, monthly cycles of 5 days of the fasting-mimicking diet. And after the 6 cycles, you see that there is a reduction of insulin resistance. And they had a control. The control diet was a Mediterranean diet that was done for 5 days, right? So it was either the fasting-mimicking diet or 5 days of a Mediterranean diet. And you see that the Mediterranean, compared to the Mediterranean diet, you see that in 6 months, about 20% of the patients on the Mediterranean diet increase the medication, maybe another 45% or 50% had no change, and a 30% had a reduction. But if they're receiving the fasting-mimicking diet, none of them increased the drugs. About 30% had no change, and 70% decreased the drug use, right? So this is now starting to look like the type of medicine that is not just keeping the diabetes in the same, it's just slowing down the progression, but it's bringing the patient back to a normal health. And same thing here for hypertensive medication. Some of them increased, many of them did not change, and some of them were reduced, but this nobody increased, and maybe 2-3 times more people reduced their hypertension, right? So it's working as our original study predicted, both for diabetes and hypertension. Okay, so what about the everyday longevity diet? So what do you eat every day? And so we know that proteins increase the level of some of these factors that are at the center of aging and the aging process. And so if you have a high protein diet, these pro-aging factors will be high, their activity is high, and the aging and diseases will be, incidence will be accelerated. So we looked at, years ago, we looked at people in the United States have either a low protein diet or a high protein diet. And we look at them either before age 65 or after age 65. So before age 65, for example, if you look at cancer mortality risk, those that had a low protein diet had a much lower, about 4 times lower risk of developing cancer compared to those that have a high protein diet. So more than 20% of the calories come from protein. But if they were 65 or older, so the 70, 80, 90-year-olds, this was not observed anymore. And now the people that had a high protein diet were doing better than the one that had a low protein diet. So now we're starting to introduce the concept of age-specific nutrition. So an 80-year-old probably has to eat differently from a 60-year-old, different from a 40-year-old, and differently from a 15-year-old, right? So it's probably at least 4 or 5 phases of life which require changes in the nutrition. So without going into the details of why, but let's say that the ideal diet, longevity diet, considering everything, is based on mostly plant-based, lots of legumes, whole grains, vegetables, nuts, no red or processed meat, low eggs, low sugar, low refined grains. But it also has a lot of other factors. For example, low protein until age 65, 70, a high nourishment, omega-3s, vitamins, minerals, eating within 12 hours a day, so 8 a.m., 8 p.m. If overweight, eating only 2 meals a day, let's say breakfast and dinner, and maybe skipping lunch and having a healthy snack for lunch. And then what I just mentioned, my whole talk, periodic fasting-mimicking diet. They don't have to be medically supervised for those that are healthy, but they may have to be medically supervised for those that are not healthy. And I wrote a book on this, and because it's complicated, there's also a Chinese version of the book. And all the 100% of my profits go to charity and go to the foundation clinics in Los Angeles and Milan. So I encourage you to get the book, the Chinese version, and read it, because I think it takes you through all the things that I talk about today. And then and this interesting just came out, and there's a study from Norway backing everything I said in the book, even though we go much further, but they were looking at life expectancy. So just maybe less than half of what I just showed you. And now they're showing if you started by age 20, there's an extra 11 to 13 years of life expectancy by having a high legume, high whole grain, high nut, low red meat, low processed meat, low sugar, low refined grains, low egg diet, right? And then if you start that at 60 years of age, now you get an 8 to 9 years increase of life expectancy. And this study actually involved China, Europe, and the United States, right? So all three, there's studies from all three places that were considered. So I think it's very relevant also for the Chinese population, and you can pick up the study if you're interested in PLOS medicine. And this is done by a group, again, in Norway. So then with chronological age, as you get older, biological age goes up and disease risk goes up. And then now we're seeing evidence that a combination of the everyday longevity diet and this fasting-mimicking diet are able to cause metabolic changes, but also regenerative changes, which lead to reduced risk or incidence for diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer. So it's difficult to know at this stage, prove this, but because we see the risk factors going down, then it's very, very likely that the incidence will also go down. With diabetes, we already know that it works, but with the other diseases, of course, we have to wait and see, longer studies. And this is all I wanted to say. And I thank all the people that my groups in Milan and Los Angeles worked on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent lecture, Dr. Longo. Now it evokes me some of the questions. May I propose it now?
Sure.
The first one is, can changing your diet prevent cancer?
Yes, no doubt. It cannot prevent all cancers. Some cancers may be viral, maybe due to genetic risk factor like BRCA mutation, et cetera, et cetera. But lots of cancers, probably over 50% of the cancers, are probably avoidable, or they can be postponed by the right nutrition and the right lifestyle. So the diet that I just presented, and if you pick up the book, I talk about a lot about cancers. It's one of the major topics, the effects of this nutrition on cancer.
So, in your opinion, that changing our diets, although it cannot help us to prevent all of the cancers, but it can help us to aging healthier, which through protecting our immune system or prevent from tumors, right?
Yeah, so nutrition, again, can help us prevent or reverse diabetes, reverse metabolic syndrome, reverse prediabetes, protect us for sure against cardiovascular disease, protects us against a lot of the Alzheimer. For example, diabetes now we know is almost doubles the chance of developing Alzheimer, right? So if you're diabetic, you almost have a twofold increased chance of developing Alzheimer. So this is all connected, right? So the nutrition, the aging process, and all the bad diseases that we get, including sensitivity to COVID, right? So this is clearly, the ones that are by far most risk were those that were older or had age-related diseases, right? Diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for answering. The next question is about your book, The Longevity Diet. The editors of TimePie have all read your book, and we found out that you mentioned we have better to eat some of food of our grandparents eat. That means that even if there are some relatively healthy diets, such as, Mediterranean diet, it might not be suitable for all the people, for example, for Chinese people.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so the idea is not to eat what your grandparents ate if it was bad, right? The idea is to look at the longevity diet and go to the equivalent that your grandparents ate, right? So maybe certain population may have had lots of tomatoes, but maybe Chinese grandparents did not have lots of tomato, but they had another type of fruit. Tomatoes are fruit. So I think that so that you have to look at the equivalents and what were your grandparents eating in that domain that it could be substituting what I described in the longevity diet, maybe in the Mediterranean diet. So for example, the Okinawans have record longevity, and they did absolutely had very little of a Mediterranean diet, right? So if you're Japanese or from Okinawa, you want to have a different type of a longevity diet compared to an Italian, compared to a South American, compared to a Chinese.
Thank you for your fascinating lesson and the answers to the questions. I'm already excited to try the fasting mimic diets, and I would go back home to ask my parents, what do they eat?
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
The recording is nearly over. Thank you again for squeezing time out of your business schedule to record this course. Now, no I'm looking forward to your further fruit.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Let's call it a day. Thank you for your effort.